The success of Netflix's The Haunting of Hill House and its recently released sort of not really follow-up, The Haunting of Bly Manor, video soon, has been really encouraging but also surprising. This type of show is incredibly rare, and before now I would have said it would be destined to become a cult hit, fondly remembered by a small subset of people, and that's it. It's why it's really good that Netflix seems to be set up in a way that's almost specifically designed to cater to niche audiences. You just don't see that many big-budget horror TV shows for adults with a strong basis in richly drawn characters. While the show's set up in the same way as American Horror Story, as an anthology series with each series telling a new story, its approach to horror is quite different. It does contain some jump scares, but it mixes them in with slow, disconcerting sequences where the viewer feels an unfurling sense of dread as they begin to realise that what they're looking at shouldn't be there. But its scary scenes aren't treated with nearly as much importance as its character building. The Haunting series is so good because it doesn't really care if you're immediately scared by it. It plays the long game. It focuses on building deeply emotional connections between the viewer and its characters, and that makes it all the more terrifying when they're put in scary situations. By the way, I am going to have to spoil some bits of this as I go into how the show works, so if The Haunting of Hill House sounds like it's up your street, then go watch it. Do it now. So, the first series is incredibly loosely based on Shirley Jackson's 1959 novel of the same name, The Haunting of Hill House, often considered her masterpiece. I slightly disagree with this assertion. I am a fan of Hill House, don't get me wrong, but I am much more into Jackson's short stories, which I highly recommend for anyone into weird fiction, particularly The Lottery and this collection called Dark Tales, which contains some incredibly inventive, bite-sized, twisted scenarios. When I say the series is loosely based on Hill House, I mean really loosely based. All Flanagan's show really takes is the setting, a few of the characters, and a handful of elements of the novel and uses them to build its own stories of a family of distinctive siblings who experienced traumatic supernatural events at Hill House when they stayed there when they were kids. There's 7 core characters, 5 siblings, 2 parents, and the series has been structured in a very sensible way. A handful of character-centric episodes, and an ensemble piece finale that explains everything and ties it all together. That's how you do a show with a big cast that's got a strong character focus. The big cast doesn't need to be cumbersome. What you do is you allow full hour-long stints to get the audience invested in their journeys. And the characters are further fleshed out in the non-character-centric episodes based on how they interact with their siblings. Beautiful. Perfect structure all round. And the thing is, the supernatural incidents in the characters' lives are not just ghosts. Not in the same way that, say, a mainstream horror movie will have, say, a house with a ghost in it, and the ghost was a lady who died ages ago or something. No, these are very personal stories viewed through the lens of the supernatural. What I love so much about Hill House is that the ghosts encountered by the family members all come to, or in one case retroactively, represent incidents, traumas and personal demons experienced by the characters, and as a result, every ghost in the series means something. The series isn't really about the ghosts. It's got characters whose stories it wants to tell, tragedies in their personal lives, and the supernatural terrors they encounter are mostly either incidental or symptomatic of a character's inner turmoil. The ghosts are tightly knitted into the character development. Treating ghost stories this way makes them much more likely to leave a long-lasting impact on the viewer. Take for example one of the siblings, Theo, easily my favourite character in the show because of just how hilariously blunt she is. She has telepathic powers. She has visions of the truth, the future and the past when she touches things and people. This power is illustrated beautifully as well. It's shown on screen rather than ham-fistedly explained through dialogue. When she's a child, she touches her mother's skin and sees premonitions of her mother's oncoming suicide. Theo grows up and becomes a child psychologist, and her current patient, a little girl at a foster home, is telling her about a ghost she's being tormented by called Mr. Smiley. And as Theo looks into the case, she only needs to touch the couch in the basement and then shake the foster dad's hand to know what's really going on here.
What are you, looking at?
Your smile.
Yeah, if you think that storylines involving child molestation by foster parents are dark, Hill House goes even further. Yeah, if I didn't mention it yet, this show is fucking nasty. I love how some of the most horrific things in the show aren't even the ghosts, and some of said horrific things don't even have anything to do with them. The most disturbing events of all for me were pretty much the entire contents of episode 5, where we follow Nell, the youngest sibling, who we know commits suicide at this point. Yeah, this was the reason why I kind of had to wait to watch this show, because it was a bit too close to home back in 2018. We watch Nell meet and fall in love with her husband while overcoming sleep paralysis. We then watch her get married, and it looks like everything in her life is pretty much working out. But then, over the course of a few traumatic months, pretty much everything around her spirals out of control. Her husband dies of a brain aneurysm right out of nowhere. Her relationships with her siblings fall apart one by one. And her twin brother, who's descended into a crippling heroin addiction in the years since Hill House, on the last night she sees him, he pressures her into buying him heroin. And she does as she's asked, and she just has to sit there while he does it. And she can't stop him from doing this. She can't stop him from poisoning himself. And all the while she's being plagued by visions of a ghost she saw as a child, which turn out to be premonitions of her means of suicide. Episode 5 is this incredibly intimate portrait of depression and mental decline, and it's the complete antithesis to Netflix's big, famous, controversial suicide-related show that I've also done a video on, 13 Reasons Why. And the reason that this works so well and 13 Reasons Why doesn't at all is pretty obvious. Nell is the main character. The viewer is trained directly on Nell the entire time. We don't just see the bad things that happen to her, we're shown the most important events in her life, events that shaped her, defined her. And importantly, we understand why and how things spiraled out of control. We watch her increasingly negative thought patterns develop over time and how Luke's behaviour affects her. I understood why she felt trapped, because that's what suicidal thoughts do. They convince you that you're trapped and that there's no way out of your horrible circumstances. I understood how Nell couldn't see a way out of her situation and how this led her back to Hill House, where she's put at the mercy of the ghosts, taking on the guise of her memories and leading her down the path to suicide. And what I loved so much about the ending of episode 5 was that the ghosts act as these allegorical manifestations of Nell's suicidal mindset, pushing her towards hanging herself. It's weird how Netflix has been responsible for both the best and worst uses of suicide in a piece of fiction. This depiction of suicide isn't accusatory. It's not trying desperately hard to teach the viewer a lesson. The counsellor isn't unrealistically callous. He does fail her, yes, but it doesn't deliver the appalling message that counselling isn't beneficial like 13 Reasons Why does. Seriously, fuck that show. And also importantly, the narrative doesn't berate Shirley, Stephen or Theo for not answering their phone, or Luke for having a heroin addiction. All of these are incidental details. All that episode 5 does is it just tells Nell's tragic story from start to finish and asks you to listen. Getting on to Luke, it's weird how the episode dealing with a character suffering from heroin addiction is only really the second darkest episode in the series after Nell's. My only real criticism of the Luke arc is that we don't actually see a whole lot of his slide into heroin addiction. I love, by the way, how they cast the sweetest little kid they could find to play him as a child before revealing that he becomes a grizzled heroin addict as an adult. I suppose they didn't show much of his slide into addiction because making Luke sympathetic is something the show's dead set on doing, and it's right to do so. And it does tackle this topic sensitively, and you do really feel for Luke. You want him to succeed, you want him to get better. Of course, the ghosts aren't all explained by literal mental breakdowns or addiction, that'd be too easy, but what I love is that the show blurs the line between genuine supernatural activity with the mental states of its characters so well that you can't even tell what's supernatural activity and what isn't half the time. And the result is that it catches you off guard when you see something that you shouldn't, or a character that could be a ghost or it could be a vision brought on by trauma starts confronting one of the siblings about their issues. This is illustrated beautifully with Shirley's ghost, a man who she sees throughout the series raising his drink to her. He's left unexplained until right near the very end, where Shirley's basically assaulted with a memory that she'd rather not think about. That time she cheated on her husband and got away with it. Shirley's always been the sensible, level-headed, capable sibling who's dead set on doing what she thinks is right. She fixes people, that's the point of Shirley. And this moment in her life was so unlike her, and that was why she just wanted to forget about it, but she can't. The memory haunts her. It's just like a ghost. Similarly, in Hugh's focal episode, we reveal that he's followed around by the ghost of his wife, advising him, guiding him, and comforting him when he feels vulnerable. This one's a bit more of an obvious idea, but I see why they've done it, because it's understandable that a grieving widower would have this make-believe version of his deceased wife following him around. And also, having the father being this knee-deep in the blurry lines between the supernatural and trauma is what spurs on the conflict between him and his eldest son Stephen, which is central to the series' point. Hugh was broken by the events of the house, the whole family were, and they've all been dealing with it or failing to deal with it in their own ways. The way that Stephen failed to deal with it might have seemed like the best approach, but it turns out it wasn't. Stephen tried rationalising what happened. He turned rationalising it into a lucrative writing career. But even though he's been rationalising it, that isn't the same thing as facing up to it or helping any of his siblings deal with the events of Hill House. With this obsession with rationalising the irrational, Stephen ends up hurting Shirley and hurting Nell by airing the family's dirty laundry in public. And by giving Theo the money, he hurts her as well by ruining her relationship with Shirley. He also ends up hurting his wife by having a vasectomy so early in his life because he's convinced the family's condition is in their genes and any children he might have would probably be subject to similar mental illnesses. You can't rationalise everything because people are irrational. And although yes, I do adore this series, that leads me to the only criticism that I have of Hill House. It explains everything. While at its core it's a mystery series and you do need answers at the end of a mystery or your viewer's going to end up feeling let down, ghost stories do typically have at least some level of ambiguity to them, and The Haunting of Hill House doesn't really have a whole lot of that. It's so good at blurring the lines between trauma and genuine supernatural activity that I kind of felt a bit put out by the confirmation that what we're looking at is definitely supernatural activity. Not in every case, of course, some of it is still open to interpretation, but the confirmation that the ghosts are definitely real kinda stuck in my craw a little bit. This criticism is fairly minor though, because as said, most events are open to interpretation, and it's not like this undercuts any of the events of the series, and it doesn't take away from them. I do love most of that final episode. It put me in mind of the Buffy episode Restless, where our characters are tormented in their dreams by manifestations of their flaws and the mistakes they've made throughout their lives. For the first little bit of it, Stephen feels comfortable as he's reflecting on the events of Hill House, and then suddenly finds his wife starts confronting him and realises, oh shit, it's not over. That really caught me off guard. Same with Luke's vision. It was just genius having his proposed love interest running off in the middle of his episode and leaving her disappearance unexplained, and then using that lack of resolution to push Luke to face up to the consequences of his addiction. I was more than satisfied with all of these conclusive visions, and it's why I think The Haunting of Hill House is such a perfect demonstration of how to construct character arcs. The characters are so richly textured and their stories feel so real, intimate and personal. While the series might not have the consistent renewal and longevity on the cards like American Horror Story, I think the impact that these characters' stories are going to leave on the audience is going to last a lot longer. For anyone who wants to end up writing anything at all, horror or not, and even if you don't typically like horror, I would definitely say The Haunting of Hill House is essential viewing.